Welcome back to the channel, fellow aviators, to episode 8 of our on-air career. In the last episode, we completed the single-engine turboprop land, that's a mouthful, certification. It wasn't my smoothest flight. I managed to almost get lost, even though I was right next to the airport, and I managed to fly the airplane out of trim significantly for about 9 minutes before I discovered it, so hopefully we do a little bit better. In today's episode, we're going to walk through the startup sequence of the Kodiak. It's one of the few aircraft that you can actually torch the engine. And we're also going to take our very first mission with the Kodiak, and I'm hoping with the extra cargo and passenger configurations, we are going to make some significantly more cash. But before I get started, just a quick thank you, first of all, to all the subscribers who have taken the time to subscribe, comment, and like. It has really helped out the channel. I can't believe I'm sitting close to, at this time, 1,300 subscribers. That's just wild to me. And I'd also like to make a very special shout out to one of my subscribers, Dusan, who wrote up a very nice, detailed instructions on how to get my track IR working. So really appreciate it, pal. All right, so let's get started. We have often picked up our jobs through the appropriately titled jobs tile. But we can also pick it up through the aircraft, and let me show you what I mean. If we come up to the Kodiak 100, we can come up to the bullseye, and that will generate a list of jobs for us. And why might we want to do that? Well, once we hire an AI pilot, he's going to be assigned to that plane. And if we have multiple pilots, we might have multiple planes all over the place. And in a future episode, we'll be able to establish some work orders, and I can show you how that works. So it's just another way of picking up jobs. So here we are at the jobs title page. And let's go ahead and sort by cash, the most, and let's see what we got. So we have multiples here. I'm thinking this one right here might be nice. We've spent a lot of time kind of up in northern Colombia. And with World Update 1 coming out, I think, next week at the time of this recording, which is going to focus on Brazil, I'd like to kind of get us south towards there. It's not the most money we could make. As you see, some of these are pretty nice, 8,500, 8,000 from almost the same distance. So it looks like about 267 nautical miles, 2,100, so not quite at our max cargo load. So I think let's go ahead and accept that one. So we'll accept that job. Let's come down to the plus check mark. And from here, we could check this FBO service availability, but I can see it's going to be a full service FBO. But we can go ahead and check anyways, in case that's not the case. All right, let's go back to the home page. We now have 2 pending jobs. One, of course, is our mission job, which we receive once you level up. And from here, that's for the old aircraft. There is an option right here. It says regenerate the mission. That might be beneficial for us since we took that when we were flying the Bonanza. And so I'm thinking once we regenerate it, once we make it back up there, it should provide us significantly more money. Well, let's just come down to this job right here, and we can go ahead and prepare the aircraft to fly. All right, so we've seen this all before. I'm going to move through it really quickly, and I will meet you back out with the aircraft as we're getting ready to get it started up. See you in a minute. Okay, I'm back with you in the aircraft, as if no time has passed. In reality, it's been about 4 days, but I'll explain later. All right, so the very first thing we're going to do is make sure our parking brake is on, which it is, and then we're going to pan down here. Let's get rid of the yoke for now. And we're going to put our master switch on and our avionics bus on. That way we can fire up the PFDs. Let's get this up and running. Next, we want to come down and check on the inertial separator, which is right here. The general rule with the inertial separator is going to be anytime you got the temperature between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius and you have visible moisture, you're going to want to have it on. Or if you're on an improvised runway, there's rock, sand, gravel, loose debris, anything that might be ingested into the turbine, you would have it on. But for now, I think we can just safely leave it off. Now, we're going to come up here to the fuel tanks, and once I turn them on, it's going to start beeping at us. I can stop that, but it's not as easy as you would normally do. Let's say in the Garmin 1000, just hit the lower right-hand soft key and it stops. I have to go through the caution page and delete them all, so I'm not going to. So I just apologize in advance. Let's get the fuel shutoffs on. Come back down here, firewall fuel shutoff all the way in. Now we want to check that our prop, condition lever, and throttle are all in the idle cutoff position. Make sure our flaps are fully retracted. They are. Then we can come over here. We're going to put our auxiliary fuel pump to on, our ignition switch to on, and now we have two choices. We can either have the starter in high or low, and that is just depends on if you're doing a hot start or not a hot start, but if you already started the aircraft once today, the temperature conditions. As a general, we can just use high. Once that happens, we're going to be looking at the NG, which I will circle right now. Once it gets to 14%, we will move the condition lever into the low idle position, which should lead to the stopping of all the beeping here. So let's get going. All right, so igniters go to on. Now I'm looking for about 14% right there on the NG. Bring it into low idle. And now we're waiting for the temperatures and pressures to begin to stabilize. We're still getting the beeping just because it's low fuel pressure. So let's, once again, now that we've done that, we can turn our avionics bus on, our generator, and our alternator. And let's move our prop, which should stop the dinging. Oh, thank you for the love of God. All right, so that's the start. It's really not overly complicated. It starts very similar to a Caravan. And that is it. That's it, though. So pretty simple. We can make sure, let's actually pan down, make sure I got everything. Now, I'm sorry. Now we can turn our starter off, igniters, and auxiliary fuel pump. The last thing there. All right. So that is the actual procedure. So pretty simple, actually. And as I mentioned before, it starts up like a Caravan. So pretty much any turbine is going to start this way, whether it's, heck, even a helicopter. When I was flying the Jet Ranger, you introduce some air, get the engine spooling up to a certain percentage, then you introduce fuel, modulate it, and then get ready to go. It's actually fairly all kind of standard without trying to talk you through. I mean, basically, if I was any aircraft that doesn't have a FADEC, it's going to start in a very similar kind of manner. So anyways, I can go through that more in depth if anyone has any questions up below. I'll probably, for the next couple flights, kind of go through the startup so you guys see it. The thing that kind of like worries me, quite frankly, is the all the dinging. And it just, like I said, you have to go through the caution page to get that to actually stop. And it, quite frankly, it's almost more time than it's worth. If that makes sense. Anyways, we are all set and ready to go. I see this time I actually have a GPS coordinates, so it looks like my GPS is working, unlike the last one. I've already pre-filed it. And so let me go ahead and taxi out to the runway, and I will rejoin you there. Okay, I'm back with you. We've got the aircraft all set up. We've got 100 knots in for our climb out speed. VX is 73 knots. VY, best rate, is going to be 99, so 100, close enough. We've set in 6,000 feet for our altitude. That is because I think up in at the airport, the initial procedure is at like 13,000 feet, so it's up in the mountains, so we'll have to do a couple step climbs on the way up there. And we have, let's see, make sure we've got our flaps set. Bring in our first notch. And before we go, I want to draw your attention to one thing right here in the bottom corner that I'm going to circle right now. Those are your trims. We have aileron, rudder, and of course pitch. And so it sets your rudder trim in that position. I think it's probably a bit much. I'm just going to bring it back slightly to the left. So I highly recommend, especially if you're flying the Kodiak, as I've mentioned in the last episode, it seems, at least to me, overly sensitive in its trim positions. If you're slightly out, it really does not like it. All right, so that looks good. Let's come back out. All right, so aircraft is set up, and I think we're just ready to go. All right, so let's get the parking brake off. We'll put our prop full forward. And our condition lever into high idle. Let's turn on my track IR and release the brakes. All right, here we go. All right, let's see if I can track centerline, at least better than I did last takeoff. All right, coming up at around 70 knots, right about there. Too much throttle, pull it back there. All right, coming up on 95 knots, we can pull our flaps back in. And let's go up to the command bars and put on our try to get that trim. Already working on the trim already. Step on it just a touch. I'm just trying to trim it right back out. There we go. Probably too much. I said very, very sensitive. Better. And you see this position, you see that line right there, a circle right now? See how it's slightly, there we go. It's kind of coming in slightly out of left. So you step, like which way, which pedal should I use? Well, you can you just step on, so in this case, my left rudder pedal, or I'm just kind of trimming to the left. Let it calm down, more left adjustment. See if we get that. There we go. Finally. Spent all the time trimming out the aircraft. All right, so we already got the autopilot engaged. And we can probably start our slight right-hand turn to get us on course. All right, so this annoys me. This dude right here. So for whatever the issue is in this aircraft, it has gender swapped me. And so when I do my walk around on the outside, now there is no interactive walk around, but as I load into the aircraft, I have a female pilot sitting in my seat, unacceptable. And even though I have selected no co-pilot, this doofus is still here. And it's only in this aircraft. I ran a bunch of different aircraft to see if it was because of the new sim update. It's not. It is a SimWorks Studios issue, apparently. I really want you to leave. Anyways, totally annoying. We get a little bit more slight left turn to get on our intercept angle there. There we go. That should help. Then we can nav on our way. Anyways, as I mentioned, as I starting up, that this is 4 days later after recording that intro. So I had done, oh my gosh, I think like maybe 3/4 of this flight, including the startup, everything. And I was recording some exterior shots like I normally do. And like a dumbass, I think that's the only way we can describe it, I shut down the whole program, Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024, as I was recording, which of course corrupted my entire OBS recording, so I couldn't even use the startup sequence, all the recording up to that point. So what a pain in the ass. All right. Coming up on 6,000, should begin to level out. We got the flashing alts, so it should. And as it does that, we're going to get slightly out of trim here as we're changing configuration. So I'll try to stay on with that a little bit more. All right, looking good. Oh, we've already passed up. All right. Matter of fact, let's just go to nav. I'm definitely unhappy. Maybe I'm just too used to my Airbus, but that's why I tend to try to sync it up completely on course. As you saw, I was just starting a hard left turn to try to intercept it, even though we're just right outside it. So I'll just micromanage it a little bit. So in any event, I killed that entire recording, and I was slightly annoyed, as you might imagine. All right, now we're on course. Let's see if we can just sync it up. All right, there we go. All right, excellent. So that was a little bit of a pain in the butt. Anyways, I think I talked a couple of weeks ago about, at this point, I guess it's been well over a week, going down to San Juan. That trip worked out really, really well. Really enjoyed it. Slight issue as we pick up speed here. We get ourselves slightly out of trim. So I'll just make some very small adjustments. See if I can get us back in. Worked out really, really well. I was taking our company flight down to San Juan, and it turned out our flight was late. So I was supposed to be in about 45 minutes before I was supposed to report in San Juan. Turned out I was about 45 minutes late. Luckily, because I was on our plane, I was able to notify dispatch ahead of time, had the captain text for me. And at that point, I just had a great FO. He got everything all set up. Flight attendants had boarded the aircraft. So I literally got off one plane, got back on my plane, taxied out like 20 minutes later, and turned around, went right back to Newark, which was kind of neat. I hadn't been in Newark since I had stopped flying for the regionals. So it's been about 5 years. So that was kind of a cool little blast from the past. And then spent the next 30 hours in Manhattan, which was kind of great. My wife came out to meet me. We had some drinks. She wanted to go, since this was extra money, she wanted to go, well, window shopping, thank God. We went up to Louis Vuitton, acted like a bunch of tourists, and went to Central Park. Came back, found a really cool restaurant that's in Manhattan that revolves. That was pretty awesome. And so had a couple more drinks, then went out to this steakhouse that was about 100 years old, which was very cool. And then I went back early into San Juan the very next day and hung out on the beach, drank some mojitos, relaxed. It's very stressful. And then, of course, the very next day went to Cleveland, where it was snowing in like 25 degrees. So complete turnaround. So I definitely prefer the view here than in the caravan. much more expansive. Make sure we got our flaps up. Just jump out. I hate you. Anyways, so that was it. Great trip. And then, unfortunately, like I said, I had the issue with the camera. That kind of sucked, even though it was self-induced. And I ended up having to go flying right in the middle of for me, a fairly hard week. Right, I've got about 4 flights in a row. So I'm heading back out actually tonight, this afternoon, actually, to do a turn, which means instead of spending the night, I'm just going out and back. So it's going to be a really long night. I'm heading out to San Juan on a turn. I get back around probably like 1:30 in the morning. And then tomorrow I head back out on a turn back to San Juan, exact same flight. It's about 7 hours of flying, probably 7.5 almost, that they blocked us for, going back and forth. So a long day, but pretty easy. You just go out and back. And then I got a couple days off. And then I think Sunday I've got like a Philly to Boston, Boston to Raleigh, Raleigh back to Philly. I report in early, but on the plus side, I'm done super early, which is kind of cool. And then that's pretty much it for the month. I think I have 1 or 2 more flights, so not too bad. All right, so we still have a ways to go. We're looking at 200 nautical miles, hour 12 minutes. So I'll let you go here. I'm just going to continue my climb up, and I will get us set up, hopefully, for the ILS into Bogota. And I will see you all in just a few minutes. Okay, back with you. We are about 7 minutes out from top of descent. Let's come over and check over here. All right, so top of descent is about 6.5 minutes. Let's go ahead and brief up the chart. We'll put on our vertical nav. Looks like it's armed up. In case we miss it, we'll need a descent rate about 871. All right, so let's brief up this chart real quick. All right, so we are looking at the Bogota ILS Zulu one-way runway 14 right approach. We need a localizer frequency of 110.7, and we have that set on 1 and 2, and we need a final approach course of 135. So let's come back over to here. Let's sync up our heading. We'll go in heading mode so we don't get too far off. And let's switch over to our CDI. And we have 135 set, 135 set on 2. All right, so that checks. We'll go back to nav. All right. So the final approach course, or final approach fix will be at 10,000 feet. The minimums will be visual. Airport elevation's 8,500 feet, and we have a bunch of multiple MSAs circled around the airport, anywhere from 15,000 kind of to the northwest, northeast, and 17,000 is our worst down to the southwest. All right, that looks good. And then in the event of misapproach, we are going to climb on runway heading until DME 15.5 from the Bogota VOR, then turn right to the SOA VOR, 185 knots max, won't be a factor for us. Cross SOA VOR at 11,000 or above, and intercept the radial 298 SOA VOR to ABL VOR and hold at 14,000. Right, so 14,000 will be the top of our climb. Looking at the notes, we have a whole bunch here. It's really talking about all the mountains. We've got some airspeed limitations, looking at the plan view. So we are going to come in at the initial approach fix of Volum at 12,000 feet. We have 12,000 feet set on number 1. Vertical path is armed, and we're 4 minutes out. From Volum, heading to 180 to the Bogota VOR, where we'll descend from 15 to 12, and then from the Bogota VOR to the final approach fix, we will descend down to 10,000 feet. All right, that looks good on heading to 147. Profile view, that all checks out. 12,000, 10,8, 10,000, final approach fix, and then 8,500 feet. We got Pappy's on the left, and once again, our misapproach here is just straight out runway heading until we get to 15 miles out. Hang a right turn. Or I'm sorry, 15 DME from the Bogota VOR. So pretty much looks like right off the edge of the runway there. Start a right-hand turn over to a SOA VOR. All right, so that all checks. All right, so that's kind of briefed up and ready to go. We can get rid of that. Top of climb is in 3 minutes. Excellent. All right. So one thing nice about the turbines, it gets right up to 15,000, no problem. Max operating altitude for the Kodiak is 25,000 feet. So if we look down here, we can see we're just getting a indicated airspeed of 129, but our ground speed's 166. There's hardly any wind. Actually, you have slight quartering headwind. So cruising about 165 knots, true airspeed, which is right. So remember, there's a difference between indicated, true, and ground speed. We see indicated on our screen, 129 knots, but remember, the higher we go, the less air enters into the pitot-static system, which affects the indicated speed, but the aircraft is still going very fast. So as we get down a little bit lower, the indicated and the true airspeed will start to sync up a little bit more. And then ground speed is just your true airspeed minus your headwind component, or tailwind, minus the wind. All right, so now we're out 2 minutes out. Haven't really used the vertical path here on the Kodiak. I assume it works just like all the others, but I have been surprised before. All right, well, once again, we'll come down and check. About a minute out. All right, we'll just stay in this view as we make sure we pick up the vertical path. And the only thing I did different or off camera is just before I started recording, I just went up to procedures and then activated the approach. So I was definitely thinking while I was flying out here, the startup was probably a little bit rushed, or it was just kind of the bare bones startup. And there's probably some other things we can talk about the Kodiak in terms of the before taxi checklist. Had I done that, I might have not missed that I taxied out without my taxiway lights on, or actually, had I not gone so fast, I would have probably not been dinged, which I will be for not having my beacon on when I started. So I think over the next couple episodes, as we fly the Kodiak, we'll probably continue to add more and more data or more information to our procedures as we fly here. I just kind of wanted to get a quick down and dirty on getting the aircraft started up for you. There's actually much more in-depth tutorials if you'd like to look those up. This was definitely not meant to be one. It was just kind of meant to show you the startup on the Kodiak. All right, we got vertical path in green. So it is starting our descent from 15 to 12, and we should get right over the volume VOR right at 12,000 if it does it correctly. So I think we'll stay in nav mode almost the entire way, or at least until we get off the Bogota VOR, in which case we'll just go on a heading of 148. We'll dial that in using heading indicator, and then we'll switch over to the localizer and then arm the approach, and then that should work out perfectly for us. So obviously we have a slight descent here. Looks like about 1,100 feet per minute. So airspeed slightly increasing because I have not changed power. But as you see, I've gone slightly, once again, out of trim. So we'll just make a small, very small correction. We're going to have another small correction once we get the other way. Or I should say once the aircraft starts to slow down. So I'm not going to get too crazy with it. So this will be my first time going in here. I think I mentioned before, I think my airline has just picked up a couple routes going from San Juan to Bogota. So I look forward to actually maybe picking up some of those flights at some point. We'll just have to see how efficient they are. So for us, a little inside baseball for the airlines. We get paid, actually, believe it or not, it's an hourly rate. So we get paid hourly. We do have a minimum hours per day that they give us. And so when you go out on a multi-day trip, which I just got back from, what you want to see is, in terms of efficiency, is how many hours does that trip encompass? Is it min credit hours, which for us is 5 hours a day pay, or is it more? Obviously, we're only required to work X amount of hours per month. And so once you accomplish that, then you get the rest of the month off. So for us, A lot of people, they want very, very efficient trips, 6 hours, 7 hours flying a day. So this trip I'm doing tonight to San Juan is very efficient. It's kind of a pain in the butt, right? I leave at 4:30 p.m., which means I have to report at 3:30, which means I need to leave my house at 1:30, and then I get back around 1:30 a.m. But it's a good solid 7 hours of flying, which means I'm completing a very large chunk of my contractual requirement in one flight. All right. Starting to level off here at 12,000. And we are, looks like just half a mile from the volume or initial approach fix. That worked out perfectly. All right, so from here, we will maintain 12,000 feet all the way till we get to the Bogota VOR, which is another 26 miles. All right, so I'll probably fast forward some of this for you guys. Okay, back with you looking at about 3.5 miles out from the Bogota VOR, at which point we should have a slight left turn to heading to 148, and we will descend from 12,000 down to 10.8, which I have programmed. VPath is still armed. Looking at the PFD number 1, it says 12,000. That is showing the altitude constraint that we're at. So that looks perfect. As you can see, we are right into the clouds, so it's a good thing we programmed the ILS. I don't think I'd like to scud run, trying to fly through holes and get at the bottom here in the mountains. I've done it. Still alive. Quite frankly, sometimes barely. I've almost killed myself a couple times. That'll probably be a story for another day. Once in an airplane and once in a helicopter, I decided to pop through a hole, which actually closed up on me. That was very unique. A little spicy. All right. 3, 2, 1. All right, we should have a heading to 148. Vertical path now is armed or active. And we should have a slight descent down to 10,800 and 148 on the heading. All right, and from here, I think what we're going to do is we'll sync up our heading bug. We will go into heading mode, come down to the CDI. And I think we're just going to start slowing down just a little bit so we can get our first notch of flaps in. Take out a little bit of power. All right, coming up on 10,800. We'll also come down here. We will arm the approach. That's actually the autopilot. Let's not do that. Put the autopilot back on. Arm the approach. There we go. All right, now we're turning in. And we've already gone underneath our glide slope. I think I waited too long to arm the approach. Or not, maybe coming in underneath it. Showing that we're above it though, so I don't know. Could probably do this visual. Oh, there it is. Yeah. Definitely too late on arming that. So let's see if I can salvage this though. Take all the power out. First notch of flaps in. That's beautiful. Second notch of flaps in. All right, I think we are going to be able to make this work, even after my dumbassery. All right, close the chart, have the runway in sight. All right, let's no slower than that. Here we go. Stay on the trim. There we go. All right. A little bit high. You see the pappies out there, white over white, but we got a lot of runway. All right, autopilot off. All right, just a little bit fast. Once again, words are hard. All right. We're at the marker. Runway's in sight. Let's see if I can make it over to center line. There's our missed approach procedure. And let's cut power. Sort into beta. I really don't want you in the aircraft anymore. Let's bring up our flaps. Landing line on, taxi line out. I've screwed up all my lights today. I'm sure I'm going to get dinged for it. It's your fault. You're a horrible, horrible first officer. You literally do nothing except block my view. And we'll just taxi straight ahead in here and end the flight. All right, so some mistakes were made, but improvise, adapt, overcome. The key is recognizing them quickly and then making adjustments. So I knew 8,500 feet was the airport elevation from the pre-brief. And so I was able just to dial in 8,600 feet, continue on the vertical speed all the way down. And let's go ahead and kill it. All right. All right, so let's see how we did. Okay, the flight is completed. Wasn't the world's best landing here. All right, let's come back out to the homepage. Okay, from here, let's go look at our current cash, and I can show you what I was talking about. So when we first rented the Kodiak, I had approximately 19,000 credits. And as you can see, I have 3 days here where I didn't fly. And so I was charged over 4,000 credits in missed flying fees. Obviously the rental here, 1.6 hours. And so I'm now down to 17.2 on the credits from 19.5. So I am definitely behind from not flying. So I will probably pick up a couple flights offline here, make sure I meet my minimums. I have to, once again, I think I was telling you, I have to fly tonight. I have to fly tomorrow night. But then I'll be off for a couple days. So I'll do some stuff off camera to build our money back up. And then we will probably on the next episode or the one after, we will hire our first employee. And we will also probably go through a little bit more in depth in terms of getting the aircraft, the Kodiak, up and running off the ground. As I mentioned before, it was just a kind of a quick and dirty, get the aircraft started. And as a result, I didn't get my beacon light on. I'm going to get dinged for that in terms of reputation and a couple other things. So we'll probably go through a little bit more of the full checklist with the Kodiak and some of the more procedures for it. Anyways, once again, I appreciate all the support. If you made it this far, I appreciate you watching. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care for now. Bye.